Alright everybody, tonight we are looking at my Black Ghost knifefish tank, and what I need to do is get in there and just do some basic tank maintenance. This is just going to be another sort of before and after day in the life Dan keeping fish type video. Nothing special or in particular. I just got to get in there and do a little bit of maintenance. Don't really feel like doing it, but it's got to get done, so I'm going to do it, and I may as well shoot some video about it while I do it. So the main things I need to do is a water change. I need to wipe the glass down. If we get a little closer here, you can kind of see all that sort of green haze. I've even got one of my otocincluses on the glass there, taking advantage of all the algal growth on the glass. My crypt over here has some yellowing leaves, and they need to be pruned out. I'm sure I've got detritus collecting in some of the corners and underneath some of the rocks. I'll need to get in there and do a little bit of gravel vacuuming to pull some of that out. And I also need to trim this temple plant here right front and center. If we'll look inside, let me pull my draping back a little bit. If we actually look inside, you can see how that's up and out of the water, so I really do need to get in there and trim that back. My temple plant, my water sprite over here, you can see back there, some of it's actually coming up and out of the water quite a bit, so this is going to need to get trimmed back a little bit. And yes, that is duckweed. All those little tiny things in there are duckweed. Once upon a time, long ago, I had duckweed in quite a few of my tanks. I really like it. I do like the way it looks. But it becomes a problem after a while, especially if you've got a surface skimmer. It will actually clog your surface skimmer up. It'll get all gunked up in your filter. It just becomes annoying after a while, and it grows like mad, and it propagates like crazy. So if you ever get a little bit of duckweed in your tank and you ever want to get it out, you've got to get every single little tiny piece of it out, or it will just keep coming back and coming back and coming back, and you will never truly get rid of your duckweed. So I'm not too worried about it. Again, it's just a little bit of duckweed. When I get in there and I do a water change, a lot of times I'll use a scoop and I'll skim the water surface manually as I'm draining a few gallons off into a bucket, and I can remove a fair amount of the duckweed that way. And as long as I stay on top of it, like most of my other, whether it's algae or all of the growth from my water sprite or whatever, it's just a matter of doing maintenance and staying on top of it. It's no different than going out in the garden and having to pull weeds or mow the lawn or rake leaves. It's all just part of maintaining a garden. This garden just happens to be underwater in my basement. So I'm going to get on with it. Another thing I really do need to do, but I really don't want to do tonight, is filter change. I don't even remember the last time I got in there and did a filter change on it. It's probably been at least a couple of months. So I really should get in there and do it. I don't like letting them go longer than 2 months on the outside. So I usually try to do about once a month, once every 6 weeks, and I know it's been longer than that. So I really should get in there and do a filter change too. I just don't really feel up for it. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to go ahead and get started, and we'll see where we end up. And I wound up doing nothing more than a simple water change and plant removal and glass wiping like I said I was going to do. I did not do anything with the filter at all. What I did do was get in there and remove some of the dead plant that we had growing on the crypt over here, so you can see it looks a lot cleaner in there. I did a little bit of a gravel vac. I have two different gravel vacs. I've got my big, I guess it's an Aquarium, and it's the drain that I use to siphon, and I drain it into the basement bathroom around the corner, and I just let it go into the shower and go down the tub. So that's what I think of as doing a water change, but I can also do a little bit of gravel vacuuming with that. It just doesn't have a lot of suction. I have a hand vac that I use at, with a bucket, and I do 5 gallons at a time that way, and that really vigorously vacs the bottom and draws the, picks the gravel up, and all the stuff that's in the gravel comes up with it. I didn't do that. I just used the big Aquarium siphon, and while it was siphoning, I wiped down the glass. I got in there and I simply trimmed the top edge of the temple plant off, so that's probably going to fork out and get a little bushier at the top. It might even force some of these nodes down here lower on the plant to start branching off, and I might start getting even bushier growth. Actually, I'm going to. I can already see where I've got some branching occurring. So now that I've cut the top of the plant, I've cut the terminus, that's going to cause lower branching. It causes hormones in the plant to cause it to grow outward more than upward, if that makes any sense. It causes the branching to increase. So that's going to get a lot bushier now that I've cut the top of it off like that. I also got over here with this crypt, and I got in there and removed a bunch of the stuff that was down around the bottom that was kind of dying and looking yellow, and just sort of did a little pruning work and cleaned that up. I'm hoping the black ghost comes out while we've got the tape rolling here, but I don't think it's going to happen, as if I'm actually using tape. I got in there and sprayed some hydrogen peroxide on the Java once it was exposed. I physically, manually removed a lot of the green slime cyanobacteria that still grows on that. Not a big deal. I just kind of have to stay on top of it. But I did do that a little bit, and the hydrogen peroxide helps keep that under control a little bit. I also sprayed down a little bit of the wood that was exposed above the water surface. I sprayed that down with hydrogen peroxide in an attempt to keep all of the unwanted growth at bay. And then I thinned out a lot of the water sprite here and I separated the two main bodies that were growing down into one big root mass, so I now have two larger root masses, but I got rid of a lot of the little plants in there, and that allows a lot more light to come through between all the leaves. And I also did my best to just, physically with my hands scoop out a lot of the duckweed that we saw in there. I decided I'll shoot another video just about that, and I'll show you how I get it out of there. If you look back in there, you see all the little roots hanging down. All the floating duckweed eventually gets hung up on something. It swirls around until it either gets caught up in my surface skimmer or it butts up against a leaf, and then that's where it stays. I got a ton of it that winds up collecting in here, and that's where it just keeps breeding and growing, and that's one of the main reasons I lose so much light coming down through the tank. That duckweed just quickly creates a complete blanket over the surface and blocks all of the light, so it's important to stay on top of that duckweed if you don't want a very dark tank. So I guess we're not going to get to see the black ghost. That doesn't really surprise me after getting in there and doing all that work. It's a bit skittish to begin with, and it's not like I just went in there and wiped the glass down real quick. I was doing a fair amount of work while I was in there, so no such luck. I did have someone ask me the other day about the barbs being around the bottom of the tank because they thought I had fed the tank, which I had, but they thought that the barbs were around the bottom because I fed. And while that was the case at that moment, the barbs do spend a fair amount of time. It's actually interesting now that we're seeing them up in the top, swimming around these roots. I'm almost wondering if they're not going to be spawning in there soon now that they have a nice fresh water change. I did about a 50% water change, and I'm thinking maybe that large water change might be inspiring them to get up here in the roots and spawn. I'm not too sure what they're doing up there. I've never seen them really so active up in the roots like this before. But they often will swim around the bottom of the tank, much like these glow light tetras are. Doesn't mean they're bottom dwelling fish necessarily, but it's not unusual at all to see them down in these lower portions of the tank. In fact, just like this barb here, you see actually swimming in and out of that cave. That's very common. In fact, this is the unusual behavior. To see them above, I'll say that top third strata of water is just unusual. Unless I've thrown food in there, they won't hesitate to come to the surface and eat, but they generally don't swim around in that top third of the tank. It's usually around the middle or below we see them swimming around more commonly, so I'm wondering what's going on with that. So go ahead and subscribe, that way I will do any updates and you won't miss them if they are spawning in there, and that's what's going on. We'll definitely do some update video of that later on, so you don't want to miss any of that or anything else I got coming up. So thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, hope you appreciate the big difference that one little water change and wipe down can do. A little bit of tank maintenance goes a long way. So thanks again for watching, I'll see you real soon on the next one.